Hey there, everybody. What's going on? Yeah. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back to Torvald Talk. Hey. What's up, gang? It's been a minute. Probably the first time I'm doing this on video by myself. Um, and I don't do solo episodes that often just because I don't know. I don't like really hearing myself talk, but here we go. So the topic that I don't know, I just felt not felt like, but an interesting topic that's been reoccurring in my mind recently has been the topic of stewardship. And I'll just read the dictionary definition of what stewardship is. What is stewardship? The position and duties of a steward, a person who acts as a surrogate an, or ugh, of another or others, especially by managing property, financial affairs, an estate, etc. Now, there's a second definition: the responsible overseeing and protection of something considered worth caring for and preserving. So, stewardship. I don't know about y'all, but in my mind, word stewardship, I don't know. I think before I've not really liked that word stewardship because it just sounds so like, oh, I have to steward something and like, oh, I don't want to do that. Like, I don't know, growing up and stuff like that, I've had like sometimes you don't want all the responsibilities that come with being in charge of something, having to like watch over something that's not always super fun or enjoyable because if something goes wrong, well then you're responsible for if it breaks. And so this idea of stewardship, I think for me, I've maybe not wanted to fully embrace what that means for those reasons. But then I thought, okay, well, what is what does the Bible say about stewardship? And I actually preached from this passage a couple weeks ago. Uh, Shout out Woods Edge Young Adult Podcast. If you have not listened to any of our podcasts over there, go check them out. They're really good. They'll help you. They're great messages that will inspire you. Um, but the passage that I thought of was Matthew 25. And if you're not familiar with that passage of scripture, Matthew 25 has two very well known sermons in them. One of them is the 10 virgins, and the other one is the parable of the talents. So, in the one with the 10 virgins, it talks about how there were five that were ready and five that were not. So, there were 10 bridesmaids waiting on the groom, and they were not ready. Five of them were not, five of them were. The five that were not were called foolish, and the five that were called wise. And essentially, the deal behind that is saying, all right, the five that knew what was going on, that knew that, hey, we're bridesmaids at this wedding, right? And the groomsman is coming, so we need to steward practically. What does that look like? Make sure we're ready to go. We have our makeup on, we have our dresses on, we have our oil in our lamps. Is the deal that the Bible talks about that they didn't have was oil, and that took preparation. That took them getting ready. That took them being responsible. And what we see in this is that practicality. I think that's a big part of this story specifically of like, okay, like to be ready for the groomsmen, you have to practically get ready. You got to get dressed. You got to make sure you have your oil for your lamps because it said like he was coming late. And it just makes me think about how are we doing that? If you're a Christian, like specifically, are you doing that? Or just even just as a person, taking evaluation of your life of like, okay, am I stewarding well the things that I've been given? And yeah, I'll keep going. I'll go into that in a second. But the next one was Parable of the Talents. And this one, if you've been in church, if you're a Christian, you know that this one talks about there were three servants, And each one of the servants, the master gave a certain amount of money. So to one he gave 10 talents, the other he gave 5, the other one he gave I think 1 or 2. It was very little. But back then people who knew what a talent was, they knew that that was a very large amount of money. And like that was years worth of wages back at that time. So it was like compared to today that'd be millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. And it's something that needs to be stewarded well because again, it's a lot of money. And I think that just goes to show, are you a person who is capable enough to be given something great and steward it well? Because we see at the end of those stories that each one of the servants, the one who he gave, I could be, excuse me, I'm getting ahead of myself. The one was given 5 and he doubled that, I believe, to 10. Go double check me on this. Matthew 25, go look it up for yourselves. Don't just take my word for it. But essentially, of him coming back and he doubled it. He was a good steward of that money. As and we take it opposed to the one who did not steward what he was given. He instead was afraid of that amount of money. He didn't want to fail. He didn't want to mess up, I guess, quote unquote. And so he went and buried it because he was, it literally says later on in the passage that he was afraid of his master. And that's why he did not go and steward the money, go invest the money. He was afraid. And so, and then what happened to that servant was he was then disciplined for not going and taking chances with his master's money, with not going and like taking a shot with the money. And I think that just goes to show that, man, we're the things that we're given, we need to make sure that we're not afraid of those things. We're not afraid of the gifts that we've been given, and we need to steward them well. And so a couple other passages that I was like, what else does the Bible talk about stewardship? And I found a couple of, well, and I just wanted to start it with this thought of, if you think about it, actually, no, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll just read you the passages of scripture. Hold on. All right, the first one that I found was Haggai 2:8. And it says, "The silver is mine and the gold is mine, says the Lord of hosts." That goes to show you right there, all the money is God's. Literally everything. None of it is technically ours, but we've been given it. So think about that for a second. And then the next one, Psalm 24:1, "The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, and the world and those who dwell within." So essentially saying that everything, the earth, everything is the Lord's. The next one, Psalm 50:10-11. "For every beast of the forest is mine, the cattle on 1,000 hills. I know all the birds of the hills, and all that moves in the field is mine." So this just goes to show you right here that in the Bible, it just says everything is the Lord's. And so if you think about it, all right, well, if everything has been given to us, if your amount of things that you've been given to steward, the things that you've given are giving away, how you're using your time, your money, your gifts, all that matters. It all matters to the Lord. And I think we miss that a lot of times. I think we don't understand the power of that. I think for a few reasons. Number one, I like what I said. Uh, like I would just been afraid to steward what I've been given. I've been afraid to step out and lead people. I've been afraid of what people will think of me if step into a position of leadership, or if you look different than everyone else. Um, like there's a cost to all that, I guess you could say, if that makes any sense. I guess what I'm trying to say is what you've been given, you have to steward well, and what you actually have to steward actually matters. What you have is not by accident. Your personality, the people that you know, your family, all that is not by accident. And so, why do we treat it that way? Why do we either deny the things that we have? Why do we deny the influence that we have? Why do we like dislike our personalities? Why do we always just try to like shove off those things, like, or the people that are around us or whatever? Like, why do we like treat those things as not worthy to be stewarded of well? I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I wrote down just a few like things that just came to my mind of things that people would say are good stewardship, but I don't really think they are. So one of them is stinginess is not stewardship. That one I feel like doesn't. There's this fine line between being stingy and being, I think some people would say would be stewardship. But I think you have to think out of it in the perspective of, all right, everything I've been given is the Lord's. And so am I walking in the way that like Jesus would have me walk? Am I walking in a manner that's pleasing to him? Am I first off, it comes back to, am I aligned with Jesus? Am I aligned with his heart? Am I seeing God rightly as a father, as someone who loves me, as someone who has great plans for me? Am I seeing God that way? And then out of that, am I seeing myself rightly? And then out of that, how do I then see people? So it is a deal of it does take practice. It's not something that just happens overnight. But I do think so. Then from that, after you've gone through those steps of like stinginess, I feel like you see a lot of people who are like, oh, I don't want to do this, or how much is that going to cost? And when it even comes to like, whatever that be, like giving to people, or I think even in America, and even as a young person, I feel like we're not very giving, even though we say we are, or like we're very like, oh yeah, we want to help people, da 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 da. But it's like, okay, but do you actually like give money? Like in the Bible, it also talks about what's that passage? It talks about, oh, why would you like send someone off, like bless someone and send them off, but if they needed something, you didn't give it to them. Like, you wouldn't actually be blessing someone. You can say all you want, but if you're not actually going to tangibly love someone or give to someone who is in need, well, then what kind of like faith? Like, Jesus is not just like an idea or some like good, like, Christianity is not just a good idea. It's a way of life that is going to look different than the rest of the world. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to look different. So for us as Christians, I don't think stinginess and like, oh, do they really deserve that? Or, oh, I don't, I earned this. And if you're being called to give something, I think the Lord wants us to be generous. I think it's interesting when you hear some people talk about, oh man, when I get money or when I do whatever, I'll then be generous. It doesn't work that way, unfortunately. Of no, how you are now, there's a saying, it says, money just magnifies who you are. So if you are a generous person when you have little, well, then you get to be even more generous you're still going to be generous when you have a lot. If you are a really selfish person with money or without money, you're going to be a selfish person with money. And so, all that to say, money's a tool, but I do think a lot of people don't live in a lifestyle that's aligned with what it is that the Lord wants for us. Okay, and the next one, perfection is not stewardship. I think a lot of people, again, this one is one, and this is just me, this is not the end all be all, but I do feel like a lot of people, when they get into the whole, I want it to be perfect, or I need it to be this, that, and the other, or even when they do things, I don't think it's not helpful. I'm sure y'all have been with people or who maybe are the person, and if you don't say you are, you might you might be that person, but where things have to be perfect, or you get so caught up on some little detail that you might think is important, but at the end of the day, it's not going to matter. No one else is going to see that you did that or put in that extra work uh, for something, even if most of the time it's often for other people. That I think a lot of people do extra, even at your job or whatever. I'm not saying don't be, again, being a good steward, but at some point, perfection, does that take up more time than it is helpful whenever you're doing something? Again, that's just off the top of my head. That's just some thought that I had. Another one, being busy is not good stewardship. I think a lot of people say that they're busy, or a lot of people pretend that they're busy, but in reality, they're actually not. And there's a lot of things that they could cut out, or things that are just it stresses them out, and it's actually not helpful. And it's like, okay, but you don't ever slow down because you're being busy. You don't ever slow down to see okay, is what I'm doing actually mattering? Is it having an impact? Is this helping me or hurting me? I think a lot of people do things out of just like either obligation, or they're going too fast, or they literally don't know why they do something, but they just like, all right, well, I've seen it done this way before, so I have to do it. I don't think that's a smart way to live your life either. Again, is it good stewardship? Is it helping me live my life to the fullest extent and being a good steward? Because I also think this. I think a lot of people, if you're a good steward of your time, of your money, of your relationships, and you actually put time and energy to actually making those things better in a healthy way, I don't think there's ever been anyone who has said, man, I wish I would have, cut out all the things in my life that actually aren't helping me. I don't think anyone has ever been like, well, that's stupid. And I look back and I'd be like, oh, yeah, that was really a waste of my time to like cut out all that stuff. No, actually, most people, when they do that, they say, man, why didn't I do this sooner? And so the next one is blaming others for lack of growth is not good stewardship. I think in this kind of ties into, I guess, more leadership stuff of whenever you see uh, as leaders, when leaders get frustrated with their people, or they get frustrated with a person or a relationship, whenever they feel wronged, or they feel misunderstood, or they feel hurt. And a lot of people, they talk about it. They just, oh, I'm hurt, I'm this, that, and the other. And it's like, okay, well, then did you deal with that? Did you explain that to that person? Did you strive for clarity in this issue? Did you say, hey, that kind of hurt me? Or, hey, what did you mean by that? I feel like a lot of people, the reason that they don't grow, or the reason that they don't steward what they have well, which I think this one specifically goes to like relationships, and then even maybe you're even like relationship with yourself a little bit, of, do you blame others for why you're why you're hurting, or why your relationships aren't good, or whatever. Maybe that makes sense. I don't know. That was just something I kind of wrote down. And another one, thinking that you have all the answers and that you're the only one that can fix issues is not good stewardship. I think, again, this one ties into, are you humble enough to maybe think that what you're doing, just even personally, like, oh man, like, maybe I haven't been doing what I'm doing right. Or I think when this comes to people, like in issues and dealing with people at your work, or even like relationships with close people, of like, all right, how am I going to deal with this? Am I going to get frustrated when people have a certain opinion, or am I going to get frustrated when people don't do what I want them to do? Or am I going to get frustrated with, whatever? Or in thinking that you have all the answers, because I know that's been something I've had to learn the hard way, of thinking, oh man, these people are idiots and they just got to do this, this, and this. But it's like, no, it's actually a lot more complicated than that. And you often have to love people through stuff, even if you're right, even if you have all the answers. I'd say whenever you're not in something, or you, like other people are, and you're like, oh, you just, and it's done, it's fixed. You just do step 1 through 5. But oftentimes it's a lot more complicated than that. And even if the answer is simple, if you like love someone, even if you like dealing with yourself, of like, man, I know how I need to manage my time better. Maybe I need to wake up earlier. Maybe I need to go to bed earlier. Maybe I need to set timers for myself of how long I'm going to do something. But yet, we get hard on ourselves. We get frustrated that, like, okay, no, like, this is a process, and you can't again. And it comes back to stewarding. Am I stewarding myself well? Am I stewarding my time, my money, my relationships? Am I stewarding them well, or am I not? So, in closing, I guess the thing for me, even as I was thinking about this, and this is not the end all be all, and honestly, this is why I like having more conversations with people as opposed to just me monologuing, talking to a camera into a microphone. It's kind of boring. Um, but I think in this, your stewardship of the things that you've given, these three things matter to God more than you think. It impacts more people than you'd like to realize, and it limits what God is able to do through you if you're not a good steward of what He's already given you. Because I know for me on that last one, for me personally, growth in leadership, growth personally, growth in my relationships with people, and understanding how people kind of operate, um, has either accelerated or it's plummeted based off of if I was already stewarding those things well. Like, am I spending time with the people that I already love and care about? Am I stewarding well those relationships? Am I checking in on them? Am I not saying I'm their babysitter, but do I actually care about people? And again, that only comes from, all right, if I'm walking with the Lord, He's filling me up to have the capacity to love people, because that's the Lord's heart. The two greatest commandments is to love God and love people. That's literally it, and those things only happen by the Lord empowering you to do those things. It's the Lord empowering you to love Him and to love others. It's not something you can do on your own. Of course, there's always practical things, but I think the more practical things are you spending time with the Lord? Are you being intentional? Are with Him, and then He overflows. He fills you up, and that's just how it works. And I feel like most of the time the Lord, and I think a lot of people are like, man, why am I in this season? Why am I, why am I single? Why do I not have money? Why do I not have the position that I want? Why do I like this, that, and the other? And I know for me personally that it's all seasons. It's all for a reason. And are we willing to like be in the moment? Are we willing to see, all right, okay, and assess my own personal like growth, my part. Am I being a good steward of my time, my relationships, my actions, my habits, my money? Am I being a good steward of those things so that the Lord can then give you more and empower you with more and trust you with more? Because again, in the Bible, it talks about um, to whom much is given, much is required. I think a lot of people want influence, want people, want relationships, want more money, but with all that, it literally comes it's more great power comes great responsibility. It's true, and because again, it goes back to it. What you do impacts others more than you'd like to acknowledge, and that's a hard pill to swallow because I think a lot of us in our American culture, we no, it's just me, and it's all about me, and what I do doesn't affect others. But either fortunately or unfortunately, I guess either way that you want to see it, it does impact. It does impact, and yeah, yep. I know this was just a random kind of episode. It's been a little while, but I just wanted to do this again. I don't do very many solo ones, and hopefully, bear with me, guys. I will get better at talking to a camera because I really do just enjoy just talking. That sounds really bad. That's why I want to have more guests, more people, more topics. Like, I really do want, not that I have all the answers or questions, but it helps me be like, oh, okay. And then also, this is so, y'all getting real taste here. It's so self conceited whenever I think like when people are like, oh, I'm going to start a podcast. But it's like, but like this, like I really want this to either be like a tool or like a resource for people, because I think a lot of people want to know that there are people out there that are just like them. I'm not saying that I have all the answers or I have all the insight, but I don't think a lot of people would be willing to do something like this, literally post themselves on the internet for everyone to hear and see and hear their opinions or whatever. But I'm fine with that because honestly, I feel like I'm called to this in a way, not podcasting, but I don't know, speaking. I don't know. Blah, 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 blah. I'm just stop talking. But yeah, love y'all. Hope this thoughts maybe help get you thinking about stewardship and man, am I walking in a way that's good? Am I loving people well? Am I doing what I've already been given? Am I doing that well? And yeah, love y'all. Hope you enjoy this episode. If you do, like, share, comment. But yeah, love y'all. Peace.